everyone. Welcome to the February Ordinary Council meeting. Firstly, the Town of Bassendean would like to acknowledge the past and present traditional owners of the land on which we gather to conduct this meeting and pay its respects to their elders, both past and present. For the awareness of members of the audience, please note that these meetings are live streamed and recorded. Announcements. I have no announcements by the presiding person without discussion. Attendances, apologies and applications for leave of absence. We have one councillor who is absent, Councillor Wilding. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to apply for leave of absence from the 14th of March to the 8th of April inclusive. Thank you. That means I will miss one council meeting.
Councillor McWilliam.
I'd like to seek leave of absence, Mayor, for the period from the 11th of April to the
What? To when?
The 11th to the 18th of April.
Okay.
I don't think I'll be missing any ACS.
Any other councillors wishing to have leave of absence? Okay. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest for any item on the agenda?
Do we need to vote?
We do indeed. Councillors, can we have a mover for the two councillors who would like to have leave? Councillor Ames, seconded. Councillor Lifka. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Councillors, any declarations of interest on any item on the agenda? No. Okay. Presentations or deputations. Now I've had Mr. George Lowry, Rector from Tadwa, who would like to do a deputation. Mr. Lowry, if you come up to this chair at the front here, and you have up to 10 minutes to provide your deputation, and thereafter councillors can ask questions. And sorry, I think you said it was item 12.8.
Yes.
Right, okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity to come and present my deputation. It is in relation to item 12.8, relocation of the town's customer service centre. My name is George Lowry. I'm currently a board member for the Bassendean resident not-for-profit organisation. Let me read this: Technology for Ageing and Disability Western Australia. Fortunately, better known by its acronym TADWA, but which is located at Collier Road, adjacent to the town's depot. TADWA is committed to assisting people who are ageing and or living with disabilities to live independently at home and in their communities. It was established over 35 years ago as a largely volunteer organisation connecting people with communications technology. Today, TADWA provides ageing and disabilities people with home modifications, therapy services, vehicle modifications, personal recreational mobility solutions, customised equipment, as well as continuing to provide access to technology that allows people to maintain communication with their families and support networks. TADWA has had, and sorry, Madam Mayor, I forgot to mention that I have with me, supporting me, a fellow TADWA board member and former councillor, John Sutherland, who I'd like to recognise as being here to support me. TADWA has had a long relationship with the town of Bassendean, with the town having been instrumental in establishing TADWA at its current location in 2007 through the provision of land and a $350,000 loan to assist in building its own purpose-built premises. In that time, TADWA has grown into over 100 staff members and volunteers who provide solutions, safety and independence to over 8,000 clients per year with an annual turnover of over $12 million. However, Tawa today has a pressing need to expand its campus. It is currently securing a lease on Broadway Avenue in order to accommodate its growth, services and volunteers. This is not an ideal situation as it means losing the team cohesion that has helped build Tawa's success to date. As a result, Tawa would like to engage with the council or the town in developing the back portion of the depot site to build a modern, purpose-built facility that would deliver substantial benefits for both organisations. Some of the many benefits for the town would include providing depot staff members with purpose-built facilities to replace the current collection of demountables, sheds and what look like canvas coverings. It could add significant office capacity, which could be used to accommodate administrative staff from the town centre, that is 35 Old Perth Road. It would also provide cost benefits through economies of scale through co-locating two organisations. A large portion of the bill could be funded by Tawa, and we think it would be within a relatively short construction window. However, that is subject to market conditions. Not least, it would provide additional revenue for the town through the applicable race, or if the town were to fund the build, through a suitable lease. The benefit for Tawa is a single campus with all its staff and operations under one roof, where it can continue to grow and provide essential services to the ageing and disability communities. Given the town's strategic priorities and significant investment in relocating staff, I would like to take this opportunity to communicate Tawa's priorities and ambitions to you in the hope the two organisations could achieve a substantially better result by discussing the potential of this deputation. In which case, I would like to extend a warm welcome to councillors to come and visit the Tawa facilities and let us show you what we're doing currently, as well as extend an invitation to the Mayor and to the CEO to discuss how the two organisations could benefit each other moving forward. Thank you again for the opportunity to present before you today. Madam Mayor, I'd like to table what I've just discussed with you and for you and councillors.
If you hand it to Councillor Blifka, he can just hand them round to the councillors. Are you willing to receive questions from the councillors?
Certainly am.
Okay. Councillors, would anyone like to ask questions? Councillor McLennan?
Me, hello. So just so everyone's aware, my husband used to be a board member on Tadwa, he's an anymore, so it's Tim McLennan, who John knows well.
Yes.
Tadwa obviously does great work, not just in the town but beyond. So you're talking about needing to expand facilities. When I was last there was a significant part of your building that was being used by, I think, Therapy Focus.
Yes.
Is that still happening?
That does still happen.
Okay.
There are the two, as part of the funding when they originally went, I think Lottery West was the main funder, and they supported co-location of different community groups, and so they're on the same lease terms as Tawa with the town, which I think is 40 years from 2007.
So like a sublease off.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You also mentioned your plans to expand, and you'd like to do it onto the depot land that abuts your site. You said a large portion of the build could be funded by Tadwa. Can you elaborate on what that might mean?
What that could look at, well, we obviously have a good relationship with lotteries, who we've been talking to about funding a larger campus for Tawa, and they're very agreeable to assisting us in that, as well as we have a fairly strong balance sheet ourselves, so we would expect that we would be able to secure our own capital funding, depending on the lease, I guess, but yes, so that would be
Yep, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. And you also mentioned a time frame, like the item on tonight's agenda is something that the officers are proposing to happen sooner rather than
Yes.
later, given the condition of the
Yep.
the facilities the staff are working out of. When you say a short time frame, what does that mean to you?
Again, subject to market conditions, which is, we all know, it's been through a bit of a topsy-turvy, but it seems to be normalising. I would expect within 2 years. We have to be optimistic, but I think we're reasonably ready to move, and providing we can engage the contractors. We are in the building industry, so we do have some connections within the industry and on our board. So I think optimistically we could reasonably expect to have something there in 2 years' time.
One more question, if you don't mind. Just a point of clarification. You mentioned rates income. Does Tadwa currently pay rates to the town? I was
No,
under the
we don't.
impression- No, that's what I thought. Yeah. So why would Tadwa suddenly be paying rates to the town?
Because we're nice people. Apart from that, look, I think that is very much part of the conversation. We're aware that we're not paying rates, and we're very grateful not to be paying rates. But as the organisation reaches a critical mass, I think it gets to a position where it can, and I would expect that could be something that going forward we could discuss.
That would be good to discuss, because there are great things that Tadwa does, but our residents specifically also need to
Yes,
benefit from Tadwa being in
absolutely.
our community.
Yes.
So, thank you for your deputation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Further questions, councillors?
Further
Councillor
questions.
Ames?
And thank you for your deputation as well. Echo Councillor Clemens' thoughts there. Do you have an expected floor plan, or I suppose expansion meters squared? Just looking at the Google satellite here, there's quite an extensive area at the back that looks like car parking. Also, you've got, I'm not sure what your relationship is with St. John's next door, and I suppose what's your pie in the sky sort of moving forward? There's a couple of questions there you might want to sort of touch on.
We're ideally looking at that space. We would like to extend directly backwards.
Sure.
So I would say, essentially being able to use in a future scenario to expand for the next, say, 20, 30 years.
Sure.
We'd be able to put a facility in the back there, back to the road. So about 4,000 square metres.
And so that would be similar to your current floor plan. You'd sort of double that in size.
Yes.
Is that correct?
It would be slightly different. I think a build would be more office space.
Okay.
That would be keep our part of the building that we have now. For workshops, there would be maybe 1 or 2 workshops that we would put into that, but I think car parking and office space.
Sure thing. Relationship with St. John next door, if any?
We don't really have a lot to. I can't speak to that, but
Sure.
I don't think we have any regular discussions.
Sure.
We seem to cohabitate well, so there are no issues, which is a good thing. So
Yes.
we share the space very well.
Sure. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor McWilliam?
Yeah, I'd also like to express my goodness with this deputation. It's not often that we get this kind of deputation, I have to say. It seems on the face of it as being very worthwhile in terms of consideration. How soon would you like to start discussions with the town?
Well, we're ready tomorrow.
That's good to know.
Actually, our CEO is currently on holiday in Canada, Whistler skiing, so we better leave it a couple of weeks.
The staff would probably be happy to go there. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
If you don't mind, councillors, I've got a few questions. So, thank you for the information. My understanding from our discussion that we had last week was that you have split your premises over several sites.
Yes.
And that you're paying commercial rental at the moment on, I think it's 3 other sites. Is that about right?
On another 2 sites and soon to be 3.
Okay. So given that you've got these split sites where you're paying commercial rental, the one that you've just mentioned, the new one, you said that's short term, didn't you?
The one we're about to sign.
Up the road
at
from me.
Broadway, yeah. It's that's three by three, so
Okay.
it's not immediate, but it's short. It's relatively short because we're optimistic we could perhaps do something with the council regarding that.
Okay, so you could probably let that, if you're a 3 by 3, you don't have to take the second option. You could, yeah, you could, if you had something purpose built within that 3 years, you could get rid of that one. Yep. I'm assuming when you're talking about consolidating, have you got leases expiring in the next couple of years with the other premises?
We do.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Which is why you're ready to move, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Would I be correct in assuming that if you're doing a significant build that you would want a lengthy lease? Obviously.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
We would.
Okay.
Yes.
So these are all discussion points to be bedded down.
Yes.
I think that's it from me. Any other councillors with questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we're now on to section 6, which is statements from members of the public. So if anyone would like to make a statement, please come to the microphone, state your name and address, and Ms. Seidel.
Carol Seidel, 55 Broadway. Oh, sorry, that's my fault. You guys want to hear me too. 55 Broadway, Bassendean. It's regarding item 12.4, the draft public health plan and final adoption. One would expect the town of Bassendean would want a good public health plan. Regular access to public health needs of the community would be needed to allocate resources to achieve the health plan priorities for the community. There would have to be a constant review and updates on the progress of the public health plan for councillors. But when you see the recommendations, outcomes and responsibilities for all the residents, one has to question the action of stopping the volunteer transport service that had been deleted from the council meeting. I feel that it should remain for future review. This recommendation from the staff needs to be questioned on the sincerity of the town's proposed health plan. One would have thought that when doing the public health survey, there should have been a question on the need to have a volunteer transport service as part of the town's public health plan. Was an important part. It should have been included. The fact that only 16 people participated in the public health survey, public health plan, also shows us the council is assuming that everyone has checked the town of Bassendean website and Facebook for regular updates on what's happening. A lot of people don't have a computer or the internet. Shows the process that the staff use to conduct the surveys is really poor and should not be accepted. The town is failing once again with the older members of the community because they assume that everyone is connected to the internet when we know that this is not the case.
So, Ms. Seidel, you're running out of time here.
I understand the town's public health plan covers a lot of areas, including drains, as well as people's health and well-being. And I don't think the residents fully understand how complex it is. Better awareness in the community through better engagement from the staff would help a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seidel. Okay. Are there any other members of the audience who would like to make a statement? Yes, sir. If you come to the microphone. Question time is next after this. This is statement time. Okay. So if you just come to the microphone, state your name and address. Okay.
I just want to make a statement concerning the safety aspect of one side of Walter Road.
So can I just interrupt? You did come up to me before the meeting. Is this relating to double parking? There's a parking amendment local law on the 12.3. So is it this relating to the parking that you were talking about?
Well, cars are parked one each side of the street. There's
Okay.
only a single lane between the two.
Okay.
And added to that, there's a construction site going on here. There's be very little space for the construction workers to
Okay.
park.
And have you reported twice? Okay.
I believe that Rangers went out last Friday to have a look at it because I reported it on Tuesday and I found the site was terrible on the Friday. So I went back to the council and I said, we need to get the Rangers down there now, which they did.
Okay. So is it because they said they couldn't do anything about it, or
No, I haven't got that far yet.
Okay. So this situation is because the staff have not yet seen the situation that you.
They haven't had much opportunity.
Okay.
They probably haven't had the opportunity to analyse the situation.
So you do have the direct number for the Rangers, do you not?
I used to go and see them at the council and they put in
But might I suggest that it would be probably quicker if you ring the Rangers number direct, and we can actually give you that number that you can ring direct. If you wait for a little while, I'll get somebody to give the gentleman the direct number. Okay, thank you.
This is the second time I've raised this matter in this forum 3 years ago.
Yes, but they change all the time. You know, parking is an issue that is a constant issue, but you know it does change all the time. So if you're experiencing a problem at the moment, the Rangers are the best people to deal with it at that moment. So if you have the direct number for the Rangers, it's probably a lot quicker than coming in or ringing the office staff.
Pretty quick last Friday because she rang the ranger while I was there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to public question time. So, I'm sorry, I missed you. Question or statement? Okay, so if you'd like to come to the microphone. Apologies, I didn't see you behind Councillor Ames' head.
Bassendean, 15 Red Street. We're just wondering if the council would consider putting CCTV at the end of our street on a little car park there. In talking to police recently, they're saying that Sutcliffe Hill is becoming a haven for drug transfers and that happening. And my over-the-road neighbour is very concerned. Into the little car park.
Oh, I know the area you're talking about. Well, firstly, I'll be blunt and say that we have no budget allocation for CCTV in public spaces at this time. I am aware of a notice of motion that Councillor Ames has on the agenda for tonight, which is to encourage residents to put CCTV at the front of their properties, at their door, veranda, facing out to the public realm, on the basis that they'll get a rebate if they connect up to CamMap, which is a police-run service that allows them to access cameras and know where all the cameras are. So there is.
But this is to do with the actual car park.
I understand. So there has been discussion amongst councillors about CCTV. Now, the reason this notice of motion may be a better option is that it provides the police with a network of CCTV across the district. It allows the police to know where those cameras are and to access the information from that. But the other thing too is that if people are senior card holders, they can access the government's rebate system as well, which is a $400 rebate. So there are various rebate systems out there to encourage the increase of CCTV at residential properties facing out into the public realm. The problem with CCTV in public places is the same as what any other infrastructure in the town suffers, and that's vandalism. Paint thrown at CCTV cameras so that they don't function anymore, knocking them, throwing things at them, knocking them. The other problem with CCTV in the public realm is that once people become aware of those cameras in the public realm, if they're wearing certain clothing and what have you, there's no way of identifying who they are. So that's another problem. The police have had more luck with CCTV cameras that are from residential properties facing out into the public realm because people are unaware of those cameras and their existence. So I understand your perspective, but I do think that we would like to try this program of rebates first to see if we get a better outcome than what we have in the past had from public CCTV.
Recently having to have to deal with police, they thought it was a great idea, so that's just why they got on that.
Okay, was this Kiara, please?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Questions? Any more questions from members of the public?
Aaron McKay, 33 North Road, Bassendean. Just on the 12.7 at night meeting, I thought they were going to keep the residents in contact about anything happening at the point of there. I didn't receive any email.
Okay, so this item is coming before council for us to go towards more detailed planning if council votes in that direction, but it hasn't been voted on yet. And I would assume that if council supports a detailed plan, that after that the residents will get an email or however the contact method is. I'll just check with Miss Davey.
Through the chair, I did contact people who completed the survey that indicated they wish to be kept informed. If you were missed off that list, I apologise. But we did contact all those who said they wanted to be kept informed.
Okay. Am I correct in assuming that, depending on what the outcome of this meeting is, that you'll probably have another round of contact with those people?
That's correct. We'll let them know the outcome.
Thank you.
Sorry, and my next one I'm thinking, on one of your dot points on page 42 of it, it says the lighting around the car park and amenities must be kept at low levels for wildlife and friendly. I'm just curious as to what their envisions for that one is, because as our last person stepped up here, we usually have quite a few not wildlife activities that happen in car parks at that time of night. I'm just curious as to whether or not the lighting's going to be done away with or less of it.
So the area where your property abuts is an area, a natural area with a lot of wildlife. And wildlife of a night time, particularly birds of prey and that hunt of a night time, they are negatively affected by bright lighting. So that's what is envisaged by wildlife-friendly lighting is lighting that doesn't, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Davey, but lighting that shines up and out can be problematic for wildlife. It distorts their ability to hunt, whereas lighting that actually is directed down into areas is a better type of lighting for wildlife. I also understand that some colours and some other types of lighting, but I'm not sure. Miss Davey, do you want to add to that?
So this, through the chair, this comment originally related if we were going to expand the lighting beyond what was currently lit. I don't believe we'd reduce the current levels of lighting. It would be a greater level of lighting.
Yeah, just because I recently got woken up at 2:30 in the morning by some noise in the car park there, and worked out that they were still in the can cage from Swan District Footy Club, and they pulled off into Point Reserve to tie the can cage down. So I probably would not prefer that there was any less lighting if they were using it as a dark position to finish their set. So yeah, sorry about that. Also, if that is the case that we're not going to do CCTV or any sort of extra lighting, is there an option for a gate to go across the reserve to stop people going down there?
No gate has been proposed in the plans, and it is a publicly accessible reserve. So, you know, putting a gate across a public access place is generally not, particularly, you know, when it's a, sorry, I've forgotten what sort of reserve it is. But, you know, reserves are generally open to the public, so a gate is not being placed in any of the planning at all. Coming back to the lighting, as Ms Davey has indicated, there's no desire to reduce the lighting in the car park area because that's town-owned land.
Yeah.
But when we've got things like lighting that's friendly to wildlife, we don't want glary lights that shine up and out. It needs to come down into the areas that's supposed to be lighting. So what was the other part of your question there? So no gate, lighting is not going to be reduced in the car park. And CCTV, again, CCTV has not been budgeted for that area. Certainly council might look at it in the budget process, but at the moment it's not in the current budget at all.
Could I at least ask that they look at an automatic locking system for the toilets after dark?
For the
toilet amenity down there? Because I have spoken to town of Bassendean workers. They do say they get a lot of vandalism at night, and I think they recently trialled locking the toilets at night to try and prevent so much vandalism. I was just wondering if they were looking at automatic locking systems for this proposal.
Yeah, thanks for that, through you, Madam Mayor. We have been looking at that over the last few months, and so that is on the cards. It does look quite expensive at this stage, but we are working through that as a proposal. We did trial locking the toilets at night. Over the past over a couple of month period, but yeah, that had its problems as well. So we are looking at the automatic locking doors.
Thank you. Mr Busby.
Busby, 53 Hay Street, Ashfield. Just a couple of questions, if I may. Just to assist Fran a little bit, we've had quite a few cameras in and around the club rooms for safety and for all sorts of things. We've had 4 cameras stolen. 2 people have been arrested because of the cameras, because when they steal the camera, even though they've got a hoodie on, they take a nice picture of themselves without unscrewing it, so that is helpful to the police. And last week, Phil took some stuff off the cameras before they were stolen to the police, and that was a person known to the police who they were going out to apprehend within the next day or two. So that was last week. So from our point of view, the cameras are good, and now the place is opened up. It's fantastic. So all credit to you guys for opening up the thing. And we have a regular occurrence, if I may, with some of the possible people coming from the Cyril Jackson School with the taking off of all the steel at the back. Possibly maybe some stuff was left behind that the kids maybe use, and they panicked a little bit and they were poking their hands down the steelwork to retrieve some stuff in a hurry before more work was done. That was from one of the staff who suggested that maybe there was some of their property stashed.
So, Mr Busby, is there a question in there?
Well, the question is, I agree with Fran that the cameras would be a good idea, and if Alan's putting up an agenda thing, I think it because in public open space, or where the sports facilities are, open space, I see stuff happening in the park, and I can't take pictures.
So,
the
Mr.
question
Busby,
is,
that's
can
more
we
of a
get cameras? Can
that's
we get
Mr.
cameras?
Busby. That's okay. I've answered that question previously.
Right.
So, what's your next question, sir?
The next one is, we have a major gum tree which is magnificent to the back of the club rooms. And I asked if a few months back it was going to be checked by an arborist. As far as I know, it hasn't been done yet. We have about 9 tree limbs that have fallen off about the size of my arms just in front of the change rooms. Last year or the year before, a limb went through the change rooms, caused damage and flooding. We want to make sure it's safe. Can we get the arborist to check it, because we don't want to touch the tree, obviously. It's a magnificent tree, it's huge and it's magnificent, but can it be made safe, or do we need to section it off, stop kids going around? Is it safe?
Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, if our arborist hasn't checked the tree as yet, we'll check it shortly. Yep. I'll see where they are with that.
Thank you. So with that, I will close public question time. Now, 8.1 is petition. And I'll just open my device. Okay, so this is the petition, councillors, that was presented last week for the barracks complex. And I have a officer recommendation here for 8.1 that council receives the petition submitted by Barracks Eden Hill OSHC in relation to the sand pit at our Faulkner Hall. 2, notes that the matter is proposed to be considered as part of the 22-23 mid-year review as addressed by a separate report on this agenda. So a mover, Councillor McLennan, seconded Councillor Ames. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. So councillors, the next item, 9.1, is confirmation of the minutes, that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 30th December 2022 be received and be confirmed as a true record. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ames, seconded Councillor McLennan. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. There is no business deferred from a previous meeting. There are no external committee reports or updates for this meeting, which means we will move on to the officer report. And we have, coming out of en bloc so far, I have 12.5, 12.7, 12.8, and the reports that are already out of en bloc, I've got 12.3, 12.4, 12.10, 12.11, and the 2 notices of motion. Are there any other reports? Sorry.
Sorry, could I ask that 12.2 short stay accommodation be taken out?
Okay. Councillors, any other reports to come out of en bloc?
All right, no, I think it's already out of block.
Sorry, just moment, councillors. Oh, okay, minor, okay. So councillors, remaining, sorry, Councillor Ames, you look like you wanted to.
No, just confirming what is coming out of
Okay,
in total.
So, the reports that we will consider tonight, 12.2, 12.3, 12.4, 12.5, 12.7, 12.8, 12.10, 12.12, or sorry, 12.11, 12.12, and then the 2 notices of motion. So remaining in en bloc is 12.6, 12.9, 12.13, 12.14, 12.15, 12.16, 12.17, 12.18, and 12.19. And I need a mover for those remaining items in en bloc. Councillor McLennan, seconded Councillor Ames. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. So councillors, moving on to the first item that's come out of en bloc, which is 12.2. Sorry.
So just earlier we discussed that it would make more sense if you moved
I-
Councillor Ames' notice of motion forward in the agenda?
I was going to bring that in just before 12:11. So councillors, Councillor Ames has a notice of motion which is discussed in the mid-year review, which is item 12:11. So just before 12:11, I was going to bring forward Councillor Ames' notice of motion, and if that passes, then obviously, if it doesn't pass, then we have to change the mid-year review. Okay. So the first report that we will discuss tonight is 12.2, which is use not listed short stay accommodation. Now, my understanding is the officers covered most of the items last week. So unless there's anything additional to discuss with the officers, we'll move straight to questions. So Councillor Carter, you pulled this one out. So
yes, I don't think I was here for the rest of that one. This is not a this is a use not listed. This is outside our planning rules, as we say, to have a short stay. I know that there's no objection from the people around it, but I have a real problem with short stay accommodation in Bassendean, and improving one, it starts to set up a precedent in improving the others. So I'm not sure why this one has been approved, considering it doesn't, or it didn't once upon a time, did. And if it does fit now, even though there's no objections, why?
So I'm going to ask Ms. Shaw to answer that question for you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Applications for use not listed can be considered under current local planning scheme number 10. The requirements where a use is not listed in the zoning table is such that it becomes a complex application, which sets the relevant advertising requirements under the planning regulations. Council is required to consider each application on its individual merits, given it's a quasi-judicial decision. So regardless of any prior applications that may have been made for this property or other properties within the district, Council is required to consider this application independently on its merits. It is capable of approval under the current planning framework, should Council choose to do so in accordance with the officer's recommendation. And this Council has previously both approved and refused similar applications.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, so if we move to the officer recommendation for that item, that council approves the application for development approval for use not listed short stay accommodation at 88 Lot 1 Reed Street, Bassendean, subject to the following conditions, and the 4 conditions are outlined in your agendas. So do I have a mover for that item? Councillor Ames, seconded. Councillor McLennan, is there anyone against? Councillor Carter, do you wish to enter into debate?
I don't wish to enter into debate. I think it's pretty obvious that it's going to pass, but I think
that's fine.
I'm fine to let it go, but I would like my objection.
So you'd like your objection noted. So council, we're not entering into debate unless anyone else. Okay. So can I have a show of hands, those in support? So Councillor Hamilton, Councillor McWilliam, McLennan, Polifka and Ames. Okay. Now, councillors, I was in error in that there are 2 questions here that have been submitted by email. I shall read them out now. Okay. So, councillors, questions are submitted by Mr. Yates of 10 Thompson Road, Success Hill. First question: to resolve all the road and footpath lighting issues in the town, including the main street of Old Perth Road, will the council consider purchasing smart solar lighting that can be sourced with appropriate long and or short poles from Asia in container lots, usually with a CCTV community safety option at a substantially better value and almost instantly ready for installation? So street lighting failures like the Extension Road near Red Rooster and Old Perth Road are a community safety issue that is at long last resolved. The response from the town is that the town can investigate suitable solar lighting in these areas. The second question, the Minister for Local Government in the last week has flagged that the position of Inspector of Local Government is getting closer and that the procedures for questioning local government are about to change. Does the town of Bassendean accept that closer scrutiny of decision making is about to arrive, and what changes to public question time at council meetings should be introduced? Plus, should this include the Audit and Governance Committee's community representation, maybe with no councillor representation? The response from the town is that the town is aware of the impending changes and will review its practices as required. So, councillors, apologies for that. With that, we will move on to the next item, which is 12.3, Parking Amendment Local Law 2023. Again, this is a fairly straightforward item. I don't believe that the officer has anything to add, but would councillors like to ask any questions on this item? Okay. In which case we will move to the officer recommendation that council, in accordance with section 3.124 of the Local Government Act 1995, makes the Town of Bassendean Parking Amendment Local Law 2023 as attached, and notes that the document will be executed in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995 and council's execution of documents policy. Do I have a mover for that item? Councillor Ames, seconded. Councillor McLennan. Do I have anyone against? I'll declare that carried. The next item is 12.4, Draft Public Health Plan. Councillors, I propose to defer this item until the next council meeting, principally because I have had some interactions where various people are proposing amendments, and I think that it might be better if councillors have a month to ensure that their amendments are not ad hoc. So to that end, I think many of us would like to engage with the officer over the next month to fine-tune this plan before we have it before us again next month. So officers, I do congratulate you on the amount of effort that you've put into this plan. It's certainly evident. However, the financial considerations are something that councillors would like to review. So, and I think that some of the councillors around the table would possibly agree with that. So I would like to defer this item. And do I have someone, a second to Councillor Ames? Do I have anyone against?
Just a question.
Question certainly made.
Yeah, for the relevant executive, does this cause any difficulties in terms of our obligation to produce a public health plan?
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. No, it does not.
Thank you.
Okay. So moved, seconded. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. So the next item is 12.5, the draft local planning framework. Now, Councillor McLennan did send through an amendment this afternoon. And I think, Councillor McLennan, I don't have your amendment up in front of me, but actually I do. Here it is. First of all, councillors, do you have any questions on this item? I have a question, if you don't mind. The facts explanatory and explanatory notes. I was wondering how far in advance they will be available before you're planning the advertising.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The intention is to provide consultation material to council through the bulletin, hopefully by next Friday, if not the following Friday. The intent is to commence advertising mid to late April.
Excellent. Okay. So Councillor McLennan, unless there's any other questions from councillors, I will go to Councillor McLennan who has an amendment.
Madam Mayor, I'll ask a quick question to the officer if I can.
Yep,
Thank you.
certainly.
Just in regards to the advertising of the LPS letter, obviously there's a few dot points here. The big one that I'm sort of looking at here is the drop-in sessions with town staff and or the I don't know, obviously what I was asking for. Drop-in sessions with the town staff, and are there going to be any opportunities for the town staff to drive, say, a community meeting where a lot of this information will be discussed in one hit instead of having people sort of drop in and drop out?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the intent was to have multiple drop-in sessions, and the reason being is because typically residents would like to seek individual advice on their specific properties and the implications of the draft framework on what it means for their property. The materials will be provided to council though, so it is open to council to make such a request.
Thank you.
Councillor Plewka.
Just following on from that, so when the residents meet one-on-one, through that process, will you convert their concerns into comments which are in the form mandated by the legislation, or do they have to separately lodge their submissions?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if the residents require assistance in making the submission, then we can have forms available for them and we can provide assistance to write the submission for them. Otherwise, our intention was to provide them a link to which they can fill out the submission form, as well as provide hard copy forms for them to submit.
Well, as long as it's not too unduly onerous, then the former seems good for those that might not necessarily have too much experience in drafting submissions. Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? So, Councillor McLennan, would you like to move the officer recommendation with the amendment?
Yes, I would, thank you.
Okay. Do you wish to read out the amendment, or councillors, do you need the amendment read out because it has been circulated to everybody? Councillors, does anyone want the amendment read out?
Maybe I can just summarise it.
Yes.
Read it out.
Yep.
So it just adds a fifth point to the officer recommendation. It doesn't change anything other than to specifically note the clauses that were included in the initial draft scheme that was adopted by council relating to tree provisions, acknowledging that we've had a lot of discussions around ways that we could try and have greater protections within our scheme. So the additional point just lists those provisions which we had attempted to include but which we've been required to remove on advice of WAPC in order to get permission to advertise our scheme.
Thank you. So Councillor McLennan has moved the officer recommendation with an extra dot point 5 that outlines the material relating to trees. Do I have a seconder for that, Councillor Plewka? Do I have anyone against? So I declare that carried. Okay, so the next item is 12.7, which is the Point Reserve foreshore plan. Again, sorry, yes.
Oh, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, acknowledging the questions that were asked earlier in the evening, and you answered a couple of them, but I was just wondering whether the staff could also be given the opportunity to answer them. So in particular, there was the question around the gate, and Mr. Adams answered about the automatic locking mechanisms, but some of those aspects that were touched on that we didn't get to hear from the officers about.
So with regards to a gate, there is the possibility of having a gate that you could lock overnight. However, that would be reliant on staff members or a contractor being available to do so. And then also if there were cars parked in the car park, finding the owners of the car to allow them to leave.
Can I ask, sorry, if I can have a follow-up question to that. That's not added into the report as a costing. So is there any costing available for something like
Through you, Madam Mayor, the cost for a gate will be relatively low.
And sorry, Mr. Adams, was there something else you had a look of intense concentration on your face?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, it does become a bit problematic trying to have staff locking and unlocking gates. We had those problems with the toilets as well, and people accessing them. We get complaints at certain times of the night, so it was quite difficult to accommodate that through staff. So it will need to be considered as a logistical exercise as well.
So if it's going to be considered, it clearly is not a part of this report. So is this a separate consideration that might come to us at some time in the future? Is that what you're thinking?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was thinking we'll maintain the status quo at this stage.
Okay. Councillor Ames?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to either of the officers speaking on this conversation. Wouldn't we have technologies nowadays that are pretty user-friendly when it comes to securing areas without the use of human interaction? Sort of like those gates with the little wire that comes down that requires pressure on one side of the gate strip, or it can be opened from the inside if you've been locked from the outside, and so on and so forth. Not meaning, I suppose, to poke the bear, but aren't we sort of a little bit in beyond 2000 for us to be able to consider some of the things that could be out on the market? Don't get me wrong, there is a cost involved, and we haven't sort of factored that into such budget, but are we, as a town, still staying in the dark ages? Are we able to maybe think a little bit more into the future about how we can have these public accessible areas accessed when required and locked off when not required to have any people or nuisance down there? Just, I suppose, a general question in regards to your field of profession.
Yeah, thanks for that. Through you, Madam Mayor, our assets are quite old, so it would take a bit of retrofitting. Look, just talking to the issues that we had in locking the toilets, it was problematic, and we also ended up engaging a security company to go around and lock them, and we had lots of complaints and it just didn't work out. So we are looking at the self-lockable doors and putting them on a timer. And we are getting costings for that. I'm aware of that. I suppose I'm not aware of technologies for locking, self-locking parks. Maybe there is, but there probably is. But and that's something that we can obviously look into. But I suppose for the point of the exercise that we're considering in the Point Reserve foreshore plan is that we'll probably be maintaining the status quo, but I'm happy to put that on if council wishes. I'm happy to put that on our agenda to look further into those sort of mechanisms.
Can I ask a further question on that? Some of the, and correct me if I'm wrong, to the two officers, some of the feedback that I've received is that the issues down there are not so much related to cars, but more to people camping in the area. So I'm not. Are you aware of that, or it might be the rangers? Okay. Councillors, are there any further questions for this particular item? So I have some questions about the boardwalk or jetty. So, for the benefit of other councillors, I have spoken to Ms Davey about this. Now, Ms. Davey, would you like to, first of all, a jetty, you've got some different costings regarding how the length of the jetty will alter the costings. Would you like to share that information with the councillors? So,
Madam Mayor, do you mean the relative costs of the three options?
well, the jetty we spoke about, if it was as per the original jetty length, which I think you said was 31 or 32 metres, was the original jetty.
Yes, that's correct, 30 metres.
And when I discussed with you the potential to reduce the length, you did have some figures there for 15.
So the approximate high-level cost estimate for the 30-metre linear jetty is about $350,000. So if you reduce that by half, it would reduce to $175,000.
Okay. The boardwalk as an alternative, because clearly some of us love the idea of the boardwalk, but the costing, we discussed the potential of could you reduce the length of the boardwalk, but your commentary on that was that it would reduce the overall effect. Would you agree with that?
That's correct. There may be the potential to reduce it slightly, but to have sort of a proper experience, it would need to be fairly lengthy.
And would you like to share the approximate cost for a boardwalk?
So based on the current length in the concept, which is 70 linear metres, it would be approximately $500,000.
Which brings me to the pathway. In the concept 1, I think it is, you do have a pathway that crosses over a smallish type of wetland, and in that concept you have a small section of boardwalk. Are you still looking at retaining that in the pathway costings?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's not included in the rest of the boardwalk costing that you've just mentioned?
No, it's additional to that.
Okay, Councillor Plifka.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. The jetty, if we build a half-size jetty, are we able to then extend that later if we get community feedback saying that we need a longer jetty?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that would be quite difficult, I would think, because it would be designed for a specific length. And usually you would start constructing it, construct all the pilings together.
Is there any way in which we can prepare for that future contingency? Are we able to have it designed so that it can be extended in the future?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it would be possible, but it would be preferable if we had that intention to design and build it to the full length initially.
Further questions, councillors? Councillor McLennan.
I'm imagining that you may be intending to propose a shorter jetty, in which case I can get your opinion on whether that is a sound option.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that would still be a viable option. 30 metres, which is in the current concept, is quite a long jetty. So if it was reduced to 15 metres, that's still quite a sufficient distance, yes.
Out of curiosity, does anyone know how long the really short jetty is at Sandy Beach? I think that's... It doesn't matter, don't worry. So I think Councillor Plifka, did you have another question?
I was going to be that same question because that jetty seems sufficient, the one at Sandy Beach. So if we knew the length of that, then that could help us.
Okay, so it's the same question.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So the Sandy Beach jetty is 10 metres long.
Okay. Further question. Point Reserve, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Point Reserve seems to have a lot of issues with I think it's algae, where swimming is not permitted. And I think that's more prevalent at Point Reserve than any of our other recreational spaces. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's rated as very poor, but I believe that is similar to other locations that are monitored, which includes Success Hill as well.
And that's mainly a summertime issue, is it not?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe the monitoring is undertaken over spring and summer. I'm not sure if it's undertaken year round.
Right. So, councillors, any further questions on this item? Councillor Ames.
Very briefly, and through you, Madam Mayor, to I suppose both the officers that are looking to build this sometime in the future. There's a degree of flexibility within these dot points, I would say. We've got a bit of a scheme or a bit of a plan that's happening here. But obviously, when we do come to grant funding and all that great stuff, and all the dollars and cents pour in, there might be a bit of flexibility to say, hey, this could be a bit longer here, and could be a bit shorter here, or a bit wider here. From I suppose what the plan of attack is at this point in time.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes. So this will just result in a concept, which is a general idea of what will be built. There will be further considerations made during detailed design, looking at the exact costings, the specific site conditions that will affect all of those details.
So, subsequent question to that. If, for instance, you've seen the amendments I proposed, Ms. Davies. If I proposed the boardwalk style and it came back that we couldn't achieve anything like reasonable grant funding, would it be difficult to revert back to a mid-sized jetty? My question is that a problem for you?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we would need to complete different design work for each option. So it would mean spending money on the detailed design for the boardwalk, and then if that didn't proceed, then looking at detailed design for the jetty.
Thank you. So, councillors, what I could do is separate out the jetty item and see which way you want to go, and then put that into the substantive motion that I'm putting up. Would you all be comfortable with that if I do it that way? So, councillors, what I'd like to propose is inclusion of the boardwalk option into the amendment that I'm putting up. I'm happy to move that, and I want to know if I've got a seconder for that option.
This would be your first preference?
My first preference, but what I'm doing, I'm moving that separate to see if there's support in the room, and if there's support in the room, then it will be included in the substantive motion, but if not, then we will revert back to the jetty second option I've got in there. So moving the boardwalk, do I have a seconder for that item? I do not. So therefore, we will remove that, and what I'm moving is the officer's recommendation with some amendments. So I'm just going to touch on the amendments. The path configuration reads a circuit within the town managed land where the area becomes inundated, option 10, keeping hard surfaces to a minimum in respect to path width and occasional use of boardwalk sections over wetland planting areas. Now that's acknowledging that there's a certain section where the path goes. The other portion where I've got an amendment is for the jetty boardwalk options. Create a jetty into the river similar to historic jetty, but at approximately half the original length, which is option 8 in the plans. With the other elements, the only change in there is the new playground delete with shade structures. And then I've got a point 3 request that the town assist the Bassendean Preservation Group and advertise, promote and contact other groups, individuals who may wish to establish a bush care volunteer group dedicated to enhancing the natural environment of Point Reserve. And that brings me to the conclusion of my proposed amendments for 12.7. So I'd like to move that, and do I have a seconder? Councillor McWilliam. Do I have anyone against? Councillor Carter. Do you wish to enter into debate, Councillor Carter?
There are aspects of it, yes.
Yes, okay. So I'll open debate, councillors. The Point Reserve concept plans, we have gone backwards and forwards with this somewhat. I do understand that the costings are of critical importance to this council. I also acknowledge that the community many in the community would like to see some enhancement of the area. I believe that what the officers have put forward is a compromise position that will deliver a project to enhance that area. Some of the things I've chosen to pull out of there, shade sails over the playground, are because I think that area is, because of the topography of the land, I think that area is in shade a lot of the day. There is always potential to add things to this plan after the initial works have been installed. So I don't necessarily believe that we need to put in everything at once. A little bit like Sandy Beach, we have installed many things at Sandy Beach, but there are some further fine-tuning that is going on in this coming year. So I would ask for support for what I've put forward, because I do believe it's a compromise that will achieve a good outcome for council and the community. Councillor McWilliam, you're seconding, so you can speak to the item.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that earlier discussions we've had, several of us have said that really is it necessary to do lots and lots of things at Point Reserve, and yourself, Councillor Carter, mentioned that, are we overdoing this? I think that this is a reduced agenda from what we had in the original sort of scoping document, but I think it's much closer to the natural setting, and it honours that, and is probably will retain its relevance to the local community as a result, and also to the other community. That's what I have to say.
Councillor Carter.
Oh, thank you. I am such a naysayer tonight. And I did promise to be nice. This is my nice face. I have opposed this one from the beginning, so it's no real secret. There are aspects that I would like to see done, including the restoration of the jetty, even a half-size one perhaps. Very little other should be done to my way of thinking. Here are 3 reasons. The cost will be huge, and I know that we could probably do it in stages, but eventually, it's still going to cost us a lot. And there are other things I feel that we should have a higher priority. 2, with our rising waters, with the global warming and the rising of the river water, it's going to be, a lot of it will be inundated for most of the year. This will bring out all sorts of problems, particularly depending on the types of materials that you're going to use. And thirdly, this hasn't been driven by a community need. It has seemed to be, this would be a nice thing to do. I feel that we need to get back to bones on this one. The boardwalk, I think, is a mistake. Well, as I said, we could cherry pick a whole lot of things about this one. But I do believe that we should not be making any of these great big decisions, at least until our new CEO's on board. But it does need to be rethought, and that's my feeling, and I would vote against it until we can really start teasing out some of these issues. And safety is an extremely important one, and I don't think, we have really addressed that one properly at all too. So I will sit down, and I'm still
Councillor Carter. Any speakers for the item? Councillor Plifka?
You was just picking up on that one point that Councillor Carter had raised, and that was with the more frequent inundation. I was speaking to one of the DBCA officers about that and saying, we have a problem. This was in the context of Ashfield, and that there will be more inundation. And the way he saw that was that it was an opportunity. And having a chat to him, we're probably inclined to believe that that is the case, that as we would have more inundation at Point Reserve, there are more opportunities for standing wetlands and things of that nature. So we can potentially make the place more interesting as opposed to just saying, the sky's falling down and it's all going to be underwater. Whilst I do note that it's going to be wetter more often, I don't think that's necessarily fatal to the attractiveness of that location.
Thank you, Councillor Clifton. Any more speakers against the item? Any other speakers for or against the item? Okay, so I'll close. Firstly, by putting into this an amendment that reduces the length of the jetty, that instantly reduces the cost of the overall project. Taking out shade sails reduces the cost of the overall project. Reducing the width of the path network reduces the overall cost. So there are many aspects to this where I'm now comfortable that the cost can be accommodated more easily, more readily with the town. I would very much like to see this project delivered not over multiple years, but within a 2-year time frame at the most. I do note point 3 indicates that it could take longer than that, but I think with the reduced scale of the project, I don't believe it should be too difficult to deliver that over a 2-year period. 1 year would be even better, but having spoken to Ms Davey, I'm not entirely sure that we could accommodate that. In any case, councillors, I believe that the amendments I've put forward in this strikes a balance in respect to the financial aspects of the project, and I would ask for your support for the amendments I've put forward. So I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? So Councillor Hamilton, McWilliam, McLennan, Polifka and Ames, and against we have Councillor Carter. Councillors, the next item is 12.8, which is relocation of the town's customer service centre. Again, as you know, I have put up an amendment, and I also note that, and I do note your comment, Councillor McLennan, about customer service centre to be changed to community service centre, and I agree with that. I do think that's quite a logical name to use for it. So there's been a lot of discussion in the past about this particular item. We've had a deputation tonight from the gentleman at Tabwa. So first of all, I'll ask councillors if you've got questions of the officers. So we've got Councillor McLennan and
so many questions. Okay, so first of all, just in relation to the deputation. So I heard some very optimistic proposals from the gentleman from Tadwa. I'd just be interested to hear from your perspective, what if council was minded to pursue this as a medium-term proposal, what do you think realistically a project of that nature would require? How much time?
Through Madam Mayor, it's probably hard to say because, to be quite frank, we're curious that the first time the town staff would hear about such a proposal would be at a deputation at the council meeting. So in the intervening hour, we've had a lot of time to look into the issue. Obviously, goes without saying that the town staff are happy to engage with any prospective developer, whether that relates to their own land or land that they would be seeking to lease to another party. It is do obviously acknowledge what the gentleman said, which did seem to be reasonably optimistic, given the multiple layers of complexity that would need to be worked through. Obviously, there's the design, the financial, the practical. There is the land tenure, and there's an assumption being bandied around that we have surplus land at the depot. I would caution council against that assumption because I believe town staff have formed a view apart from noting that the land as it's currently set out is broadly used by and large by the town's operations, but there's also a small element that we informally lease to have an arrangement with the SES, which we are seeking to formalise, I imagine over the course of 2023 in accordance with the Council adopted land asset strategy. So in terms of the gentleman's deputation, obviously it piques the interest of staff, having only just heard about it. The fact that there was a reference to Tadwa being able to fund most or all of the construction, that is of interest. The comment about rates revenue is well made by yourself, Councillor McLeod. And would need a little bit of discussion because the response probably requires further exploration. But to cut a long story short, sort of reiterate my opening remarks is that it's curious the first time the town has heard about this is this evening. But happy, of course, to, depending on what council's decision is this evening, to make contact with that organisation and discuss it.
Just in relation to the officer recommendation and the options that were put before council in the agenda, if council was to support one of those options, is there anything to preclude the officers still continuing on with point 2 of this amendment to have those discussions with Tadwa in view of there being a medium to longer term option that's more permanent?
Through Madam Mayor, certainly nothing to stop that. And I would suggest, irrespective of what council resolves tonight, we would probably be seeking to have that discussion, just because obviously it raises all sorts of queries from town staff. So certainly, if council resolves to proceed with option 1 or 2, it doesn't preclude town staff having those discussions with Tadwa.
Thank you. And just a last question. So Councillor Hamilton's put forward her amendment, which requests the CEO to look into quite a number of things, and I appreciate where she's coming from in terms of wanting to look holistically and see what other options there might be. When I look at this, it looks like it's not a small task for the staff to undertake. I'm just wondering if you could give me an indication of what you think that work would require. I'm imagining it's some resourcing and so on, as well as an insignificant amount of time.
Through Madam Mayor, that would be correct. We probably need to probably run it through the CVP over that coming budget. The council adopted land asset strategy already contemplates a review of the town's operation centre, the town's depot, as to what is required, what the optimum layout is, whether any land is indeed surplus to requirements. So that is already embedded into the council adopted land asset strategy. Obviously, the strategy is a longer term horizon, and that work has not yet been undertaken. Some of that probably overlaps with some of the dot points contained here. Other aspects are probably not so problematic in terms of concept plans. The 4th dot point under item 1, which refers to the concept plans. I know the Director of Corporate Services has previously advised council some months ago that that work hadn't been undertaken on the basis that there was no commitment from council to actually proceed past this point. But that said, it shouldn't be too difficult to prepare that if that was the want of council. As the report suggests, it's considered ample space in the library to accommodate a second customer service area. The town could, I presume, prepare a fairly rough concept plan to demonstrate how that would look spatially. But obviously, the first couple of dot points there would be a larger body of work.
So, sorry to dominate, but just the comments you made about how a number of these are already embedded in the land asset strategy and were earmarked for future work. Do you have an idea about when these particular items would be likely to be undertaken and I guess there's potential for council to reprioritise and bring it forward if there was a desire to do so.
Through Madam Mayor, it wasn't considered the highest priority aspect of the land asset strategy because that was really focused. The highest priority is based on discussions with council and based on feedback from the community through various means. There was a focus on town centre development. So in response to that, most of the focus in terms of implementing council's adopted land asset strategy was focusing on the town centre properties in and around Old Perth Road. If council wants to refocus away from the town centre and to the depot or any other site in the land asset strategy, that can be a matter for discussion between staff and council. But I would suggest this is the review of the depot is probably going to be the next sort of 2 to 3 years, noting that most of the efforts in terms of our land assets was, as I said, directed at the town centre.
Councillor Carter?
Yes, thank you. Just 2 questions. One is that if you do move the customer, the community service staff out of the building, what are we going to do with it? Is it just going to remain empty?
Through Madam Mayor, set out in the report, we are currently undertaking an expression of interest process in accordance with the previous resolution of council. That is due to conclude in the next fortnight, and a report will be brought back to council next month. And obviously the decision will be before council at that point as to what the next steps are.
Right, then wouldn't it be better to keep the staff in situ until that's all found out? Sorry, that was just
Sorry, you should let
the
the officer answer that.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Question.
Sorry?
Sorry, it was just a statement, not a question, but go on, please.
Through Madam Mayor, as set out in the officer recommendation and the time frame component of the report, staff are not suggesting that the relocation will occur immediately following council's decision. The decision that is being sought at this stage is to inform the budget process.
Thank you. My second question is: will this move mean that the library staff in their workroom will be given over to the community service staff, and where will the library staff go?
Through Madam Mayor, I'd suggest there would be some rationalisation of that space. That would be necessary to accommodate additional staff, but that is something that could be outlined in a concept plan if that is what is asked of staff.
Thank you very much.
If I may ask some questions on this. Firstly, the EOI process for 35 Old Perth Road is due to finish in a couple of weeks. So I'm assuming the intent is to bring that back to the March meeting or April.
Through Madam Mayor, yes.
Okay. Also, we've had some correspondence. I sent some emails to you after a meeting with our local Member of Parliament. And I'm wondering if you haven't responded to that. I'm wondering if that is something that we can pursue for our local Member of Parliament to receive information to deal directly with Minister Carey.
Madam Mayor, I don't recall receiving that, but in any event, we have corresponded with Minister Carey and we were directed to other community staff.
Okay. In respect to 35 Old Perth Road, even if there was a result to the EOI process in March where a potential development might be flagged, is it not the same thing, the timeline, a delayed timeline would be involved in any development of that site?
Through Madam Mayor, if the proposal was for it to be developed by a prospective purchaser, yes, there would be may well be, depending on what responses, if any, that were received, is that there is not a proposal to develop a site, but simply acquire it from the town. That is not to say the town that, so the council needs to agree to that proposal, but we just simply haven't concluded that process, and we will bring a report back to council in March. What I would say is that the vacation of 35 Old Perth Road is provided for specifically in the council adopted land asset strategy and contemplated by council's recent decision about 35 Old Perth Road.
Okay. Well, also in the land asset strategy, which is again a confidential document to the public, there is a notation about analysis of the depot site, and I do take on board your comment about that being some years down the track. But would it not be advantageous, given this opportunity, and opportunities don't often come our way very often, but given an opportunity that might be presented, would it not be worthwhile to explore that opportunity at least over the next month before the EOI comes back to council? Is there the opportunity for the administration to explore the opportunity, and in March when we've got the EOI process, what I'm getting at is even if all of these aspects of what I'm asking for are not available, you could still bring back the information that you have gathered thus far. Would that not be possible?
Madam Mayor, certainly as I responded to Councillor previously, the town board happy to liaise with TADWA. I would be caution against assuming staff would be in a position to bring back detailed information, firm commitments about development opportunities, construction costs, leasing arrangements. I can imagine the discussions, at least in the initial period, would be reasonably high level. But again, it's all based on an assumption that part of the town's depot is surplus to requirements. Again, that's not to say we should have the conversation with TABA, because obviously there's an unsolicited approach that we've received tonight, and that's worth discussion. But I also think it's worth council actually considering its exit strategy for 35 Old Perth Road, particularly given it made a previous decision to actually run an EOI process that ultimately couldn't be finalised until such time as it was ended.
Councillors, are there any other questions? Sorry, I've manipulated the dialogue for a while. Councillor Polifka, apologies for that.
That's right. Just like to disentangle some of the issues. So we assume that within 10 years, the civic centre comprising all staff here in the council chambers will be located elsewhere. I think there are some costs which we're going to have to incur in the interim to keep this facility up to serviceable standard. What of the 290 that's sought, what proportion of that is, I suppose, what I would call necessary expenditure to keep this facility at an acceptable standard?
Through Madam Mayor, we would be a rough estimate and probably tantamount to a guess. The figures put in here are considered based on the little we know, the best we can come up with. This facility here is not overly problematic, putting aside the general standard of the actual office accommodation. For the issue from a health and safety point of view is 35 Old Perth Road, obviously the particularly steep stairs, the toilets being located on the first floor, and they being the only
I suppose that's the second part. So when there's a move from 35 across to the library, how long is that going to take to start saving us money? So there'll be an initial expense to relocate, but I take it each year it will be less expensive to have those services conducted out of the library than from Old Perth Road, 35 Old Perth Road?
Through Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct. It obviously costs about $35,000 a year to operate 35 Old Perth Road, which most of those costs would cease once the site is vacated. That is in addition to whatever capital sum might be realised if council was ultimately to transact on the property. But
just putting that to the side, so disentangling the sale of the property from what we're seeking to do, which is to, I suppose, improve staff facilities and to also minimise the expense. Over how many years would it be proposed that the move from 35 across to the library would start to pay dividends? So cover the initial relocation cost and then start to save us money. Would that be sort of in a 5 to 10 years?
Through you, Madam Mayor, based on the rough numbers we've put in the report, probably 6 or 7.
Okay.
And it's important to note, however, that it wouldn't just be a straight move of staff from 35 Alpeth Road to the library. There would be a small number of staff that would need to be accommodated in the library, but there would also need to be staff accommodated here in 48 Alpeth Road, which obviously brings about some of the cost in terms of accommodating those extra staff.
Does it repetitioning of the floor area?
Correct, through Madam Mayor. There'd be obviously for those that have walked through the office environment, and some councillors did. The layout is not particularly efficient. We feel that we could locate additional staff here if it was laid out more sensibly and efficiently. But in terms of the underlying question about the payoff period, I would suggest based on the numbers we've got in the draft report, it would be at that sort of 6 or 7 year mark. And going to the underlying sort of assumption about a possible relocation to a final destination, I think 10 years would be probably, if anything, on the optimistic side, but a fair starting point.
Right. So, assuming that is where we want to go, this is in the interim, you would be of the view that this is probably the cheapest way for us to get there.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. I suppose there was an alternative option 2, which involved a more commercial arrangement down at Hawaiians. That does have its advantages in terms of customer access, potential to amend our operating hours to better meet the needs of customers, that sort of thing. But that would come at a real financial cost. And on balance, the staff recommendation is that if we've got an existing facility or facilities, even if those facilities require some improvement or retrofitting, that would be a more appropriate option than actually going to a third-party commercial provider.
The final question, the TADWA proposal, what we know of it, that would largely affect the staff which are currently located at the depot and not staff which are currently on Old Perth Road?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's a good question. I suppose potentially, this is all very speculative here, we've only just a brief snapshot from the gentleman. It could be that if there was a facility capable of accommodating additional staff, the staff that are currently located in 35 Alpeth Road and or 48 Alpeth Road could be located at the depot.
But not to the extent that might undercut the 10-year plan.
Sorry.
So, but not at the expense of undercutting what might ultimately be a 10-year plan for a improved civic centre located
through Madam Mayor,
elsewhere.
potentially. I suppose that goes to the nature of the deputation, is that it's so unexpected that would be a proposal put forward to us at this time in that manner. It could, if there was merit in advancing it, and there was potential for both parties to benefit, it could be one that really shakes up the council adopted land asset strategy.
Well, let's not speculate. We'll leave it at that.
If you don't mind, councillors, I have some further questions. Understanding the footprint of what's required for a community hub come civic centre, I would assume that would be required no matter where we plan to put a civic facility, be it Swan District's Oval, be it on this existing site, be it wherever. I would expect that information would be necessary for councillors to have an idea of what sort of footprint might work in the town centre. So my question is, I did bring this up on Thursday last week when you showed myself and Councillor Ames through the other side of the road. Would it not be wise to rationalise the workforce so that those who are front-facing entities in the workforce are located in the town centre, and the other elements of the workforce, which you've identified in your report, that they could work from another site, i.e. the depot? You've even identified Ashfield as a site where staff could work from. So my question is, would it not be advantageous to provide that information about the spatial requirements of each department to the council so that they can actually have some understanding of the requirements?
Through Madam Mayor, I broadly agree that if the council was embarking on a major redevelopment project, be it the depot, Bassendean Oval or other, the scoping out of the specific requirements would be an absolutely essential component of that. So, once obviously the point's been made, the advice being provided before that we would be seeking to embed that quite significant project into the long-term financial plan, core business plan, and the annual budgets as required. And can certainly agree with yourself, Madam Mayor, that investigation, that information would be absolutely critical.
Okay, so my understanding is that you, having scoped out this particular building, you already have some of that information in respect to what a building of this size could accommodate in respect to staff and the business units. So is that so difficult to provide in the next month after you've had a chance to engage with the gentleman who did the deputation?
Through Madam Mayor, it's not difficult at all. It's effectively the organisational chart. And we know how many staff we have, so therefore we know how many staff we have to house. We don't have a great deal more science than that, but that can certainly be provided to councillors.
Okay. So, councillors, I have put up an alternative, and I would like to explore this particular option prior to the officer's report. I do believe that report, if this came to nothing, I do believe that report could quite easily come back to council for a determination in the next month or two. But I would very much like to have support for council on this alternative. So I'm going to move that alternative, and I'd ask if I've got a seconder. Councillor Carter. Do I have anyone against? Councillor McLennan. I'm assuming we'll enter into debate. So I'll start off. Councillors, in the commercial world, opportunity, when it comes along, is never, ever dismissed. Anyone who's successful in business will grab an opportunity with both hands and run with it and try and make it work. This is an opportunity. Just because we're a council does not mean that we should ignore opportunity. What it means is that we should explore the idea, and it might be that it comes to nothing. It might be an absolute waste of time. But if this proposal has legs and works for us, then it could be really advantageous for this council. We've already spoken in the past about ensuring financial sustainability. We have various things that we would like to do in the future. Clearly, financial aspects of any deal is really important. If this proposal has the ability to deliver a brand new asset that houses our staff, and I don't mean just our staff in 35 Old Perth Road and 48 Old Perth Road, I mean our staff over in the depot as well, who are also in digs that are less than ideal. I don't know if any of you have been through the depot demountables. I certainly have. And I don't believe that they are, I think they're considerably worse than what we have in the town centre. But that's an opinion, so I shouldn't stray into opinion. I would say to the staff, if you could come through, if this is successful, my alternative, you can provide even just a portion of this information, I would be grateful. I'd be particularly interested in a rough concept plan of what is planned for the library. I think if you could provide that, you might provide some comfort to the councillors about what might happen or might not happen there, depending on a council decision. But we don't have that in front of us at the moment. We're being asked to relocate the community service centre to the library without that information in front of us. And I would like to see that information at the very least in respect to this report, the officer's report, before making a decision on it. So, councillors, I would ask for your support for my alternative, and I will now pass over to Councillor Carter, who seconded this alternative.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I very briefly, well, actually, I think I'll reserve my right to speak later.
Councillor McLennan against.
Thank you. The proposal that the Tadwa gentleman's put forward is very interesting, and I don't think by supporting one of the options that have been put forward by the staff is in any way dismissing exploring that option. Although the gentleman was very optimistic, we know that realistically when you're working with a local government that requires council decisions on every stage and so on, that 2 years we're not going to have a facility that the staff can move into and use. That is at best a medium-term solution. What we have at the moment though is an issue where we've got staff over the road in facilities where people go down the street to use the toilet because they're so inadequate. This has come before council multiple times now, and we keep just pushing it down the road. And those people who are coming to work every day to deliver on the things that we want for our community are in this accommodation. It's just not up to scratch. We have made decisions along the road that have pointed us in this direction. Our strategic community plan focuses on town centre development. Our land asset strategy focuses on getting out of that site so we can free it up to have some town centre development. The longer that we do nothing there, the more we're holding up that process. And it may be that the expression of interest doesn't lead us anywhere, but that doesn't mean that there's no options for that site. The Mayor and myself have had somebody else contact us and say, I'd be interested, who we've directed to the CEO. So the EOI process doesn't need to be the end of the road for that site either. Independent of whether we pursue the Tadwa option or not, there's a need for us to invest some money in upgrading the facilities, both here and if we don't move at 35 Albert Road. So we're going to be spending money for the next few years on a building that we don't actually want anymore and on this building here. Plus, we're still going to be pursuing this other option if that's what council decides. I don't think that's a good use of time and resources at this point. Councillors, I'd encourage you to support the officer recommendation for option 1, which is moving from 35 Perth Road to here, the library, and to Ashfield. I'd be very happy for that to include the provision of concept plans to council so that we have the ability to have a look and have some input before some final decisions are made. But I don't think at the moment hinging our decision on what may happen with Tadwa is a really good move. That might be an excellent opportunity, but that is not what we need to decide right now.
Any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Ames.
And thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I just want to definitely don't discount anything you said, Councillor McLennan. I'm full with you on that. I'm just going to give a bit of, I suppose, experience. I've relocated an office team of about 40 individuals from one site to another on a terrace, my previous role at the Australian Institute of Fitness. And without us even picking up anything, we had concept plans to find out sort of what staff we had, what staff we planned for in the future. So I'm talking, a couple of years worth of forward planning. We're talking about, okay, if we get a lease for 5 or 10 years, where our business is going to go to. because that has a very strong, I suppose, forward momentum about sort of what sort of space we actually do need. It was very pleasing to go through with the CEO in both areas to say, hey, there's obviously what we've got as a status quo, and the status quo does need to change, absolutely. Not to say that, we need to have gold-plated basins and toilets, but obviously a little bit of a standard up from what we've got. Because the big thing we're talking about here is obviously cost savings, land asset strategy, but also the people that are working within the town of Bassendean as well. As you said, Councillor McLennan, working on the stuff that we are deciding upon around this table. And if we've got some pretty spot-on solutions for them to be able to want to get out of bed and walk into their establishments to work, money does have to be spent, absolutely. The part that I'm really, I suppose, supportive of, Madam Mayor, within your alternative motion is the putting together of some concept plans. Now, Councillor McLennan, you said that having support of option number 1, inclusive of some concept plans, is where I see everything come together. The Tadwa situation is a big pie in the sky. The gentleman spoke very confidently. I can do that as well. In regards to where this particular business is travelling, we've got a whole bunch of things that need to be taken into consideration. The big thing was the market workforce and how that obviously affects costs, build times, and obviously we've got to decide whether or not we actually want to go out to Tadwa in the first place. So I'm not sure if there's some way that we can include and come sort of together with our proposals to say option 1 sounds pretty good. We need to get out of 35, 100%. That needs to be done, and I think we can house them in here for the time being. With the addition of making sure that before we do that, some concept plans get put together so that we know definitely that the money that we're going to spend is going to be efficient and that it's going to be worthwhile in the first place. So I'm not sure if you would like me to draft something up as an amendment or if Councillor McLennan might have some options in regards to that, but I just wanted to voice my opinion that I don't disagree with both of your comments, but some sort of concept plans need to come together for me to be fully supportive of one way or the other.
So, if I may, in my amendment, I have provision of concept plans. So, if the staff could at least start on this, then you would have concept plans. What timeline would the officers be able to provide?
Through Madam Mayor, had councillors asked for this last Tuesday at the briefing session, councillors would have those concept plans. So the short answer would be that they would be fairly basic, fairly rudimentary, but they would not take into design.
So, sorry, Councillor McLennan?
Oh, so just to clarify, when I was speaking earlier, I should have been more specific. I was intending to foreshadow moving the officer recommendation with an additional point that was for the provision of the concept plans. But I also wanted to confirm on the agenda, it says that this decision requires a simple majority, and just acknowledging we only have 6 councillors here tonight, and that it involves a financial commitment. Is that correct?
Through Madam Mayor, it's making this is not adopting the 23-24 budget, but it's making a commitment to adopt the budget. So I'd form the view, unless told otherwise, that a simple majority would be sufficient. And obviously, when we bring back, if council resolves the officer recommendation or something similar to it, that would be part of the budget discussions going forward and would be embedded into the draft 23-24 budget. Council would actually make a decision to allocate the funds at that point, but this would be an indicator of council intention.
So we're going to have this whole conversation again at budget time. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, I didn't.
Through Madam Mayor, ideally not. If council makes a decision tonight, this would be our hope and expectation. There would simply be a formality at the budget stage.
Thank you.
Councillor Clifford, is that a question?
It's a question and then potentially a way forward. So for the CEO, the notice of motion that we're currently dealing with, is that inconsistent with the officer's recommendation? We simply put all of it through?
It's an alternative.
No, it's an alternative at the moment, but if I were to move an amendment to add as the next 2 points the officer's recommendation, everything would sail through, because I don't necessarily agree that they're mutually exclusive.
Through you, Madam Mayor, with the concurrence of the mover, Well, the alternative could be better amended.
So if you have an amendment, if you put it forward.
Yes, yes.
So you want to add an amendment to my alternative, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what would be your amendment?
My amendment would be the officer's recommendation, just to tack those on as the next 2 points.
Sorry, I've got this noise in the background.
The amendment would be to include the officer's recommendation, because I don't think that the two are at odds. I think they work together.
Through Madam Mayor, yes, that could be progressed, and that would effectively mean there are 5 points to the council resolution. Points 1, 2, and 3 from Madam Mayor's alternative, and points 4 and 5, which are points 1 and 2 of the officer recommendation.
Yeah, because I don't see any inconsistency, so that would be what I think.
Just
Yeah.
I'm somewhat confused because I understood the intention of your alternative was because you didn't want to pursue relocation to Burnham or
Well, I'm
It
just
doesn't say
actually
that.
considering.
I know it, so I'm trying to understand.
Okay, so I'm just considering what Councillor Polifka said. I okay, so at the bottom. Okay, we're getting there. So sorry, Councillor Carter.
I would like to speak before that's out voted on.
Okay, just give me 2
Sure.
seconds because
Excuse me.
okay. So Councillor Carter, you had a question, did you?
No, I don't have a question. I'd like to debate.
You'd like to debate?
I'd like to debate, but I also don't think, I think there's this actual, if you're going to push the relocation agreement tonight, that is without the concept plans, that is going against what I think you were expecting to see. And there are other issues to consider.
Okay, so councillors, as the mover of the alternative, I just want a minute to consider these to see if there's a meeting point in this because
Councillor Hamilton, may I suggest that we adjourn for 5 minutes and we can all have a drink and you can walk on over?
that would be a lovely.
I'll second that.
Can I have it? Okay. Shall we do that, councillors? So move to adjourn for a few minutes. And I just want to talk to the CEO about this. So
Everyone in favour?
councillors. We've all had our little break, except me and Lou. Councillors, I would like to proceed with my alternative as is, and allow the staff to engage with the gentleman in the deputation as much as possible, and to provide as much of the information as I've requested as possible, with no expectation that you will have it perfect. Okay. On the basis that with the EOI finishing next 2 weeks, that if there is no potential in what I'm proposing and the officers have that opinion next month, then there's nothing to stop the officers representing this particular officer recommendation as part of the EOI process. So with the report that they're presenting for that. So councillors, on that basis, I would like to proceed with the debate on my alternative motion and go from there. So we've heard from some councillors. We got up to Councillor Carter, who was ready to debate. So if you don't mind, councillors, I'd like to reopen debate on the alternative without amendment.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question first, because I was discussing with Councillor Ames here. Why have we not considered Ashfield? And why is it that we are still going ahead with the peppercorn rent of a private organisation? Can you tell me also, has that been approved yet? Or are they still on a month-to-month lease? These are, sorry, 3 questions, but you know what I mean.
Councillor White. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I don't know which that was.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this interesting question. Thank you, Councillor Carter. The town has received approval from DPLH for the management order to be changed to give it the power to lease. It is currently with Landgate. I inquired of Landgate recently as to the progress, and they told me that their time frame for requests such as ours is between something like 37 days and 142 working days, and we're getting towards the back end of that period. So I'm hopeful that we will receive a response fairly soon. So consequently, at the moment, the town actually doesn't have the power to lease the premises, and Yamana Living are occupying the premises under a regular hire arrangement for 4 days per week. Once the town receives the power to lease, then a lease will be brought to council for consideration.
That brings me to my second part. Why are we doing this when we could possibly use that area as well with the with fit outs and everything, because it's a newer building, you've got all your facilities there. So it staggers me that we're going to be having the library, which is as I've pointed out before, our most used public service, having to cope with extra people in it. It's not a big library, and I have been told, and I haven't seen any concept plans, none of us have, that all the offices will be given over to the community service people. Is that true?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, Ashfield has been considered as outlined in the report to council tonight. The proposal is to relocate the community development team to the vacant office space at Ashfield.
Yeah.
Secondly, when council made the decision to divest from the provision of home support services for seniors, a lease on favourable terms to the incoming provider was openly considered and reported to council, and was part of that process. And in terms of the library and the relocation of library staff, we're talking about 3 customer services officers. We have 3 customer service officers rostered on any given day.
So that would be the relocation of customer services staff that we would propose to the library. One or two of those would be at a counter to be constructed, and the other one would likely be in the existing library office space, taking telephone calls.
So, getting back to Ashfield, because I'm still not clear on this one, please forgive me. The fact that Amana has taken over, which is fine, doesn't mean we have to provide a space for them, because it's a community thing. My understanding, it's a daycare which is for Amana people to come and do activities. Am I right? Which means they're not necessarily Bassendean people.
Well,
These are people.
Through you, Madam Mayor,
Amana.
it is a day centre, and it was a core part of council's requirements when considering the divestment of senior services to encourage the new provider to continue to provide day services at the Ashfield Centre. So that's what the administration has done.
So I'm going to interrupt here and say that we've sidetracked here a little bit. I understand where you're coming from, but I do think that we should be debating the issue in front of us, and I do think that this is something that we could take up with Mr. White at another time, if you don't mind, Mr. White. So if you would like to go back to your debate so that we can debate this.
Well, I would just close with saying I think at this stage, and we have been arguing about this a lot, is that it's a big move. I really do believe that we should wait till the new CEO's on board, because I think it'll be very much affect him. And I would very much like to see the concept plan before agreeing to the move, and I think that's where most of us are coming from. So that's my argument. I understand the necessity. Believe me, I'm not saying there's not a problem. There really is, but there may be other alternatives, and one is that the mayor has put up as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Any councillors against the alternative that I have put forward? Any councillors to debate for or against the alternative? Okay, so I will close. Councillors, much has been said about timelines tonight. And truthfully, how long is a piece of string? How can we see into a crystal ball? No, we cannot. My alternative is asking for some additional information, and it's asking to explore an opportunity. That's it. The officers, if, as I said previously, if this is not something that is going to produce any results, the officers can bring back this report that they've got in front of us as part of the EOI process that's coming back to us in March anyway. It might be that in exploring and engaging with the Tadwa gentleman and looking at some of these things, it may be that it is a longer term project that the officers are going to say it's going to be 5 years. I don't know. We haven't had those detailed discussions yet. If that's the case, then the officers are perfectly welcome to bring back this report as part of the EOI process that's coming back to us next month. But in that time, we should have the provision of concept plans, which I have requested as the 4th dot point of part 1 of my alternative. And it reads, provision of concept plans for the proposed relocation of the town's, I've got customer service there, but we could change that to community service centre. And I do think that's a great idea, Councillor McLennan, to the library, together with estimated costs of this portion of the work, because I am interested in how much just that portion might cost. I don't think it's going to cost very much, but I would be interested in rough costings. I'm not going to nail anyone down to exact dollars and cents, but I would like that information before I make a decision. So, councillors, I've put forward this alternative. I would very much like your support, and I don't see that it hinders, from a timeline point of view, the report that the officers have put forward. That potentially could be put forward to council next month and still accepted. And I don't believe that that is a great impediment time-wise on the budget or on the timeline of relocating. Because a relocation will not happen until there's a budget allocation. Budget allocation won't happen till June. So we're in February. I see no problem in delaying this for a month so that we can get a little bit more information. And on that note, I'm going to put it to the vote. So those in support of the alternative that I've put up, raise your hands. I have Councillor Polifka, Carter, Ames, William and myself. And those against, Councillor McLennan. Okay, so, sorry, councillors, I've just lost my little list. So the next item is the annual. Sorry, I'm just at the wrong page. Well, 10. Okay. So this is the 2021-22 annual report. Councillor Carter, you have questions there.
And I'm so sorry, everyone. But,
no, don't be sorry.
My question is on the annual report, and forgive me, it's a long one. Why was the following misleading statement including on the draft annual report? On the 27th of July 2021, the council resolved to sell the property, but it actually gave it away for $1. So it's misleading about that it was a commercial arrangement.
Councillor Carter.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a question. My question is, why are these things in this?
Because, okay, I will let the officer answer. If the officer could answer that part of the question first, because I think that needs clarity before you proceed. So, Mr. White, or yourself?
Through Madam Mayor, as the councillor herself identifies, it was sold for the sum of $1. It was not gifted at nil consideration. There was consideration, and that consideration was $1 as per the council resolution.
Would that be put in? Because it does assume it was a commercial arrangement. Anyway,
so you're looking to...
Well, let's give people the facts.
Okay, okay.
Because that's what our annual report's
So Councillor Carter?
Yes, I am being nice, promise.
No, that's fine. But it would be difficult to amend financial reports or an annual report that has been approved by auditors. I think at this stage, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be rather difficult, would it not?
Well,
to actually
it's just a statement.
Through Madam Mayor, the annual financial statements could still pass through. Council could adopt those separately, but whether or not an amendment could be made to the annual report. But I suppose while I'm talking, I would suggest that the full facts are outlined in the report to council at the time.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. You have another question, do you, Councillor?
It does, and it relates to the fact that it says that the community will access it. Well, as far as I know, the community has had no access to either the cottage or the building since that time. And it also said that that the conditions, but isn't it true, that, since I'm asking this question, isn't it true that we were told that it doesn't matter what the conditions are because this is freehold land? It's been handed over as freehold land.
I don't believe that's correct.
Through Madam Mayor, that's simply not true.
Okay, thank you.
There was a transaction, there was a deed attached to that transaction, and there was a caveat attached to the deed.
Okay.
So the conditions imposed by council have been formalised and embedded into a deed of agreement with the now owner.
Well, thanks for telling us that because I don't know because I haven't seen it. And are we going to receive any progress reports? Because the assumption was that we would that it would be completed within 4 years of the sale, and that, as far as I'm aware, 50,000 a year would be provided.
Through Madam Mayor, obviously it's separate to the annual report discussion, but certainly update can be provided to council as well.
That would be lovely, thank you. But I just thought the whole tenor of it was a bit misleading. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on this item? Can I ask a question? The Mayor's intro has not yet been provided to you, which I will provide to you tomorrow, but that will be included despite the fact that it's not in the draft.
Through Madam Mayor, certainly part 2 of the officer recommendation notes that it will be inserted. So if council is prepared to adopt the annual report sans the mayoral forward on the basis that it would be inserted.
I can assure councillors there's nothing dramatic in there. So councillors, unless we've got any other questions, do I have a mover? Councillor McLennan, seconded. Councillor Ames. Do I have anyone against? I declare that carried. Okay. Now, at this point in time, I would like to move to Councillor Ames' notice of motion, which is 13.2. And there has been some changes to this notice of motion. And I believe that everyone's got a copy of that in front of them. No? Okay. Councillor Ames, would you like to read out your notice of motion?
Very quickly. Thank you. This is my first notice of motion officially by myself, council, so it's a momentous occasion for myself, so you can note that down in a minute. And thanks for everyone's support, and I think it's going to be a bit of a thumbs up for our community as well after some of the stuff that we've seen in the media and across Australia, also Perth, especially with the blue shops in town recently. So that council requests the CEO to create the Town of Bassendean residential closed circuit television CCTV rebate program, including the following elements. Rebates of 50% up to a maximum of $200, whichever is the lowest amount of the cost of new CCTV installation in the town that includes a public angle field of view overlooking the road, footpath, front verge, or any other applicable public area. The rebate would only apply to new installations purchased after the program's commencement date, so therefore no retrospective applications will be approved, and the surveillance cameras installed where the residential property owner or occupier provides evidence of having registered the CCTV system with West Australian Police Force CAN WA. Applications would only be accepted until the budget funding is depleted. Rebate applications will be limited to 1 per household, and also the West Australian Seniors Card members to be directed towards the WA State Safety and Security Rebate Scheme, which is a different subsidy there, and therefore will be ineligible for the Town of Bassendean's residential CCD rebate program. And point 2, that Council considers a budget allocation of $20,000 for the program in the 2022-2023 mid-year budget review. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. So, Councillor Ames, you have moved that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Carter. Do we have anyone against? I declare that carried. Councillor Ames, congratulations, success on your first.
Thanks,
everyone. So councillors, that then brings us to 12.11, which is the mid-year review, annual budget 2022-23. So councillors, do you have any questions on this particular item? I think Councillor McLennan, you were going to ask a question about Old Perth Road reallocation.
I think it's best if you ask that question because you brought it to my attention and I'm not sure what you were exactly
Okay.
referring to.
So I'll ask this of the officer, Mr. Adams, I believe. There was a $90,000 allocation in the July budget last year for Old Perth Road design, and I believe that that included tree planting as well. And that's going to be reallocated to the, yes, that's it. So I'm just wondering, the Old Perth Road planning. So I'm just wondering the scope of that work, what was supposed to be involved in that scoping, and if it did include tree planting, then the 90,000 wasn't entirely dedicated to just planting; it was also tree planting, which is a separate amount. So I'm just curious about what was in that 90,000 allocation.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm just having a quick look now, but my understanding is there was two separate budget items amounts. One was for 90K for an overall Old Perth Road uplift design, if I could put it that way. Whereas I believe there's 50K still in the budget for planting. For tree planting, which included, tree cells and.
So is that planned to go ahead this winter, or is that going to be delayed pending the creation of the structure precinct? Yeah, what I'm asking is, what are your plans for that 50,000? Do you have a desire, or do you have plans to do the tree planting in this coming winter, or are you going to leave it for the precinct structure plan?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there are two in my mind. One, the horse should go before the cart, but we do have what we have, and we do have a plan that we have put together for the Old Perth Road tree planting. We've done an assessment and put together a plan for that, which I am hoping to bring to council in the next couple of months.
Councillors, are there other questions regarding this item? Can I ask one more question of Ms Davey? The $10,000 allocation for contribution to the Ashfield plan. Given the dialogue that's happened recently about the town spending significant money on other things like mosquito control, this contribution of $10,000, is it in proportion to what the other proponents are paying? For instance, Watercorp, is this a contribution that every party to the committee, if it is a committee, it's a group doing the plan, are they all contributing financially to this plan?
I believe they were all requested to provide significantly greater funding than what has been requested of the town.
Okay, councillors, if there are no other questions, do I have a mover for this item? Councillor McLennan, seconded Councillor Ames. Do I have anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Proposal to enter into a lease agreement with Bassendean Bowling Club. Thank you, councillor. Do you want the air conditioning turned off?
That'd be great, it's just, I don't have COVID.
Sorry.
Really bad sinus.
Sorry, I didn't realise, councillor. Just by all means, put your hand up and ask next time, it'll be fine. Now, the CEO requested that this item be withdrawn for a very minor amendment that needs to be made to the officer's recommendation. If you'd like to actually indicate what that amendment is.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you can see from the officer recommendation, it's predicated on whether, if council wants to do it, it should. It is not a staff recommendation per se. It's simply responding to the request from council to have this matter brought to council. So, if council wants to depart from the council adopted community leasing framework, I would recommend that the introductory statement simply be changed to say that council.
So remove if. Okay, so it's changed to that council, and if it's deleted and wishes to depart from the council adopted community leasing framework, is deleted as well. So it just goes that council and then goes into point 1 and 2, which is a fairly straightforward amendment. So councillors, do I have any questions on that item? Do I have a mover for that item? Councillor Ames, seconded. I'll second that. Anyone against? I declare that carried. So councillors, that brings us to my notice of motion, which is 13.1. Now, this afternoon I did send you a copy of the delegations as they exist, so that you could see the changes that I'm proposing. It is difficult to understand those changes without actually seeing the original delegations, which is why I sent that through. I note the officer has indicated, councillors, if you want to ask Mr. Gibson any questions on this, please feel free. No? Okay. Any questions of myself before I move? Okay. So I'll move this. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carter. Do I have anyone against? I declare that carried. Okay. Are there any announcements of motions for the next meeting? No. No urgent business. No confidential business. So I'll declare this meeting closed at 8:32 p.m.